Nothing is hidden that will not be made known. Nothing is secret that will not come to light. Gospel of Thomas. You didn't find this message. It found you. And not by algorithm or accident, but by rhythm. A deeper pull. A pattern moving beneath perception, calling quietly through symbols, through time, through thought. Because there comes a moment, sometimes unexpected, when the inner soil becomes soft enough to remember. Not to learn, but to rehear what's always been humming beneath the surface. And that's where we begin. Not with a claim. Not with a promise. But with a remembering. You are not separate from the laws that shape the stars. You are not distant from the source that sings creation into form. You are part of it. And there is a voice, older than time, quieter than breath, that once guided the rising of civilizations and now begins again, through you. The ancients called it Thoth. To most, a god. To some, a myth. But to the initiated, Thoth is not a figure to worship. He is a function. A force. A bridge between what is imagined and what is real. Between the formless and the formed. Between the divine dream and the breath that names it. And if you're hearing this now, it's because the time of bridges is returning. Thousands of years ago, in the stillness of temples lit by oil and silence, his name was whispered, not to summon, but to align. Thoth was not the creator. He was the one who inscribed creation. The architect of order, the scribe of the gods, the one who translated vibration into geometry, thought into sound, silence into manifestation. He didn't create the world. He spoke it. But not in the way we speak today, not with noise, not with distraction. His language was sacred. His speech was symmetry. Every word a wave. Every tone a key. Every syllable a frequency that knew exactly where it needed to go. And that's what the ancients understood, that reality is not built. It is spoken. It is sung into coherence by those who remember how. Before anything could become visible, it had to be aligned. Aligned in rhythm. In intent. In vibration. The Shabaka stone, one of Egypt's oldest surviving records, speaks of a time before time when Adam, the primal force, desired to create. But that desire alone was not enough. The heart thought, yes. But it was the tongue that shaped. The word that manifested. And that tongue was Thoth. The heart is the impulse. The tongue is the bridge. The word is the spell. This was not poetry. This was law. Creation, in its truest sense, was never an act of force, it was an act of alignment. And Thoth stood as guardian of that alignment. Not as judge, but as recorder. Not as punisher, but as mirror. He observed the frequencies before they became form. He balanced the intention before it shaped the outer. He was the god of wisdom, yes, but also of time. Not the ticking of clocks, but sacred time. Kairos. The exact moment when something is meant to be spoken. When a truth becomes ripe. When a vibration finds its form. And here is where it becomes personal. Because this isn't about mythology. This isn't about statues or stories. This is about you. Because the same structure, the same sacred sequence the Egyptians mapped in the stars, it lives in you. The same principles. The same laws. The same process of creation. And just as the cosmos needed the bridge, the word, to become real, so do you. What you think is not enough. What you desire is not enough. Until it's spoken clearly, consciously, in harmony, it remains a wave. Thoth is the intelligence that reminds us of this. That shows us the invisible path from thought to form. That records the truth of our vibration, whether we know it or not. He is not outside you. He is the field that responds to you. And this field is always listening. Every time you say, I am not enough, it writes. Every time you repeat, nothing works for me, it echoes. Every careless phrase, every unconscious declaration is not just a sound. It's a code. You are not merely speaking, you are scripting. You are not merely expressing, you are casting. And the universe does not respond to your words. It responds to your vibration. This is where so many miss the mark. They try to change their life by speaking what they don't yet feel, by declaring what they don't yet align with, and then wonder why nothing shifts. But Thoth doesn't respond to wishes. He responds to coherence. And now you begin to see. The word is not power. The aligned word is power. The one born from silence, from presence, from truth. This is the first law. And in the next breath we will begin to remember how to speak again. Before the word comes silence. And not just the absence of noise, but the fullness of space. The fertile stillness where resonance is born. Where the unsaid begins to pulse. Where the invisible starts forming shape. The ancients knew this. That's why initiation always began not with teaching, but with quiet. Because only in silence can the weight of a word be felt. Only in stillness can the subtle be heard. And in that stillness, one law returned again and again, in temples, in stars, in inner vision. As above, so below. As within, so without. Not a slogan. A structure. Everything that happens on the outside is a reflection. Not of your hopes, but of your harmonics. Not of what you say, but of what you sustain. And that's the mirror no one can escape. You look outside and see chaos and think the world is cruel. But the initiate knows to look inward. What in me resonates with this chaos? What signal am I sending that matches this disorder? Because reality doesn't attack. It echoes. And in that echo, Thoth writes, not to judge, but to map. Not to punish, but to reflect. His feather weighs not your mistakes, but your alignment. Not your flaws, but your frequency. And that scale, that sacred balance, is never broken. It reads what you are and shows you where you're off tune. This is why ancient Egyptians said creation was never random. Never by accident. It was always measured. Always rhythmic. Always in time. And Thoth was the keeper of time. But not clock time. Not the time that rushes you or ages you. Sacred time. The moment when a seed splits. The second when the moon bleeds into fullness. The breath when a soul becomes ready. He knew when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. Because every word carries a consequence. Not as punishment, but as pattern. And this is what almost no one sees, that the words you speak every day are spells. Not magic tricks, but initiatory codes that either bind or free you. I'm so tired of this life. I'll never be enough. No one ever stays. And you think you're venting. But the field thinks you're casting. You think it's emotion. But the vibration doesn't discriminate. It records. It echoes. It manifests. And then, without knowing, you begin to live inside the spell you just spoke. But there is another way. The path of the sacred tongue. The ancient Aramaic word Abracadabra was not nonsense. It was not showmanship. It meant I create as I speak. And it wasn't a metaphor. It was instruction. A formula. The geometric unfolding of vibration into form. And when you understand that, everything shifts. Because you realize the word isn't just what you say. It's what you align with. It's what you carry in tone, in breath, in belief. And that's what Thoth guarded, not just grammar, but the soul's ability to shape. He was the scribe, yes, but also the architect. The one who saw not just the symbols, but the structure behind them. And this is where the teaching becomes radical. Because it places the power not in ritual, not in priesthood, but in presence. Your daily life is your temple. Your speech is your ritual. Your silence is your offering. And your body is the papyrus. Every action is being written. Every thought is being felt. Every pattern is being sculpted into something the universe must respond to. That is not mysticism. That is mechanics. And it's happening now. Every sentence you speak without awareness, every word you release with frustration or fear, it shapes your field. And your field doesn't lie. It attracts not what you want, but what you are. So what happens if you speak from coherence? From the space where your thoughts, emotions, and presence align? That's when the true spell is cast. Not to manipulate, but to mirror truth. That's when Abracadabra becomes real again. Not as a trick, but as a key. A tuning fork for your reality. And in the ancient schools, that was the first lesson before any magic was taught. The silence before the word. The alignment before the ritual. Because a mouth filled with noise cannot shape the sacred. Only the word spoken from the quiet mind, the balanced heart, the centered body creates without distortion. That is the discipline. That is the practice. To feel first. To align second. To speak third. And then only then to receive. Because the field is always listening. And what you're saying is what you're calling. What you're repeating is what you're sustaining. And what you're sustaining becomes you. So here, with this breath, you're invited back. Back to the original language. Not of culture, but of coherence. Not of concept, but of vibration. Back to Thoth. Not as myth, but as mirror. Not as God, but as guide. Because now the field is open. And the pen is in your hand. But holding the pen is not the same as knowing how to write. Because writing, true writing, isn't about ink. It's about imprint. Not on paper, but on presence. Not in letters, but in resonance. And the moment you become conscious of this, the moment you begin to choose your words not to explain, but to shape, you enter the path of the initiate. Because what you speak becomes law. Not the law of men, but of vibration. And this is where most go wrong. They speak from desire, but vibrate from fear. They speak of peace, but carry judgment. They affirm love, but echo abandonment in their tone. And the law doesn't listen to your wishes. It listens to your frequency. This is why so many affirmations fail. Why so many rituals feel hollow. Because they are spoken from contradiction, from misalignment, from the fractured field of a voice that does not know its own root. But when the voice is rooted, when it emerges from the clarity of coherence, from the ground of aligned thought, feeling, and knowing, then it carries power. Quiet power. Lasting power. The kind of power that doesn't seek to dominate but to declare what already is. That's what Thoth encoded in silence. He wasn't just watching words. He was weighing them, feeling their density, their direction, their consequence. Because a word spoken in truth is not just a sound. It's a seed. And every seed waits. Waits to be watered. Waits to be believed. Waits for the right alignment to bloom into form. That's why in the Hermetic tradition, the true initiate speaks less. Not because they're uncertain, but because they're aware of the cost. Every word is a thread woven into the web of becoming. Every sentence a spell in the architecture of the field. And once spoken, it begins its movement, seeking coherence, seeking manifestation. This is why silence is sacred. Because it is the space where discernment grows. Where you decide not just what to say, but whether to say it at all. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. You begin to hear the voice behind the voice. The tone beneath the tone. Not the surface desire, but the deeper need. Not the loud pain, but the quiet longing beneath it. And that's where transformation begins. Because until you can feel what you're actually saying beneath what you're saying, you're not in command of your spell. And Thoth, as the archetype of divine language, will not inscribe confusion. He waits. He listens. He lets your field settle until your words stop scattering and start sculpting. And when they do, the temple begins to rise. Not the temple of stone, the temple of tone. Built not with bricks, but with vibration. And inside it, every element lives again. Earth, the grounding of your intention. Water, the emotion that gives it flow. Air, the clarity that lifts it into form. Fire, the force that moves it forward. Ether, the silence that holds it all. This is the pentagram, not as symbol, but as structure. You are it. And every part of you speaks. Your walk speaks. Your breath speaks. Your gaze, your gestures, your stillness, all of it carries a language beyond language. And that's why the ancients said, the initiate doesn't learn to talk louder. They learn to listen deeper. Because in that deep listening, they begin to recognize what is ready to be spoken. And what must still remain sacred. Because some words aren't for now. Some truths aren't ripe. Some vibrations still need silence to mature. And in that maturity, another power is born. The power not just to shape your own field, but to hold space for others to remember theirs. This is what Thoth truly guarded, not just information, but initiation. Not just what to say, but how to say it when the time is right, when the field is ready, when the vibration can be sustained. And so, if you're still here, still listening, it means something in you is ripening. Something in you is beginning to carry the frequency that can not only hear the sacred, but speak it. And that changes everything. Because now, when you open your mouth, the field listens. Now, when you place your attention, energy moves. Now, when you speak, reality begins to rearrange. So speak as one who remembers. Speak as one whose voice is no longer random, but radiant. And when you do, you won't need to convince. Your tone will carry the proof. Your words will plant the seeds. And your silence will become the sanctuary where all truth begins. But even the seed, once planted, must meet the seasons. Because creation is not instant. It is rhythm. And your words, even the most aligned, are not demands, they are offerings. Offerings to the invisible structure that listens not just once, but always. Not just at the peak of your clarity, but also in your shadows, your silences, your stumbles. And here lies the great forgetting, that the universe does not only hear you when you speak with power. It hears you always. In your complaints. In your doubts. In your casual curses thrown at the mirror, or the day, or your own becoming. And that's why Thoth waited. That's why the ancients practiced silence. Because they knew the field never turns off. It receives. It records. It reflects. So what are you feeding it? What tone do you carry in your bones, beneath the voice you offer to the world? Because that tone, not your desires, not your mantras, is what writes your script. And when the scribe records, he does not edit. He inscribes exactly what the soul broadcasts. No judgment. No exception. That's why the judgment scene in the Book of the Dead isn't about morality. It's about weight. The feather of Ma'at, truth, harmony, cosmic alignment is placed on one side. Your heart on the other. And if the heart is heavy not from sins but from incoherence, it cannot rise. This is not punishment. This is physics. This is frequency. And the question isn't, are you good? The question is, are you aligned? Because alignment is what allows ascension. Not belief. Not performance. Not ritual without resonance. And here you are standing not before some mythic tribunal, but before your own life. Before the feedback loop of reality that is showing you, moment by moment, what you've truly spoken into existence. So ask, do you recognize your reflection? Not the one in the mirror, the one in your patterns. In your delays. In your repeated stories. Because the scribe has been writing. And the field has been shaping. And the story unfolding around you, with its beauty, its breakdowns, its blessings, is the exact echo of your vibration. Now, this might feel heavy. But it is also holy. Because if this is true, if nothing is random, if everything is vibration, then you are never stuck. You are not cursed. You are not abandoned. You are not lost in someone else's dream. You are simply resonating at a tone that matches your past broadcasts. And now, with this awareness, you can choose again. You can pause the old sentence, inhale the new breath, and begin not from scratch, but from presence. Because rewriting your field isn't about forcing a new story. It's about tuning your instrument, clearing the static, aligning the mind, the emotion, the word, the act, and letting the new resonance sing its shape into form. That's what real magic is. Not control, not spectacle, but coherence. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to be real. The kind that moves silently like the moon over tides, like breath over fire, like Thoth through the corridors of becoming. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, the universe listens. And perhaps now so do you. You hear the echo in your chest. The memory not a fact, but a frequency. That somewhere, in some other time, you already knew this. And forgot. And now you're remembering. And this remembrance is not just for knowledge. It's for transmission. Because when you live in alignment, your very presence speaks. You don't need to convert. You don't need to preach. You become a field of invitation. A resonance that reminds others of their own frequency. This is how real teaching works. Not through explanation, but through coherence. Not through words, but through being. And Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of the word, knew this. That's why he didn't chase disciples. He didn't plead to be understood. He simply aligned. And from that alignment, truth rippled. So now you stand where he once stood, not in Egypt, but in essence. With your life as parchment. Your breath is ink. Your silence is structure. What will you inscribe? What tone will you carry into the next moment, the next hour, the next choice? Because you're no longer unconscious. The veil has lifted. The scribe is watching. And the next sentence is yours. And maybe now, only now, you begin to understand why the ancients treated words as sacred fire. Because in every syllable there lives a seed. A seed that does not ask if you're worthy, only if you're coherent. That's why the wisest ones spoke little. Because they knew the difference between noise and spell, between confession and creation. They knew the word was not for decoration, it was for direction. Direction of energy. Of form. Of fate. So pause for a breath. And look at your life not as a mystery to be solved, but as a sentence being read back to you. A sentence you wrote. Maybe in haste. Maybe in pain. Maybe in forgetfulness. But written still. And here's the miracle, a sentence can be rewritten. Not by erasing the past, but by choosing the tone of the next word. Because the field doesn't demand perfection. It asks for clarity. Not clarity of thought, clarity of vibration. The coherence between what you say and what you carry. Between what you ask for and what you believe is possible. Between the future you imagine and the present you embody. That coherence is what makes the word living. And only the living word shapes reality. That's what Thoth guarded. Not information. Not power. But the bridge between divine architecture and human agency. Between the blueprint of cosmos and the heartbeat of a single soul. And now that bridge lives in you. In your voice. In your choices. In your ability to stop before you speak and feel, is this true? Is this aligned? Is this needed? Because every unnecessary word dulls the blade. Every unconscious phrase adds static to the signal. And the signal is everything. The ancients had a name for it, logos. The word that holds the world. Not the word you read. The word you become. And here's the paradox, the closer you come to that word, the quieter you become. Because truth doesn't scream. It hums. It pulses. It waits to be heard by an inner ear most have forgotten how to use. But you're listening now. Not just to me. To yourself. To the field around you responding. To the subtle shifts already moving simply because you paused to feel them. And this is the initiation. Not a ritual with robes and incense, but this silent agreement between you and the unseen. Where you say, I remember. I return. I realign. Where you stop seeking shortcuts and begin building coherence. Where you understand that your greatest spell is not what you say out loud, it's the life you live. That's why Thoth never needed to shout. Because the truth he held couldn't be spoken by force. It had to be tuned. And now you are tuning. Not perfectly, but honestly. And that's enough. More than enough. That's the signal that reaches the pattern behind the world, the deep architecture that builds in silence. That signal is you. A voice remembering its origin. A breath remembering its blueprint. A human remembering the divine word buried inside their own vibration. And from here, everything changes. Not all at once, but like light returning to a dim room. Like warmth returning to a forgotten body. Like memory returning to the soul. Because it's not about becoming something new. It's about returning to what's been waiting all along. The word, the scribe, the scale, the silence, all of it is you. And from here, we continue. But not with more noise. With deeper resonance. Let that be your next step. Not louder. Truer. Because in that tone, the tone of alignment, even the cosmos pauses to listen. And in that pause, in that brief stillness between thought and breath, there is an opening. Not out there, but inside. A space where the next layer of truth begins to unfold, not through explanation, but through remembrance. Because this isn't about learning. It's about reactivating what was buried beneath survival. Beneath noise. Beneath forgetting. And now you begin to see that every sacred tradition, every glyph, every myth was speaking of the same thing, the path home. Not a place, but a vibration. A return to coherence. The Egyptians didn't build temples just to worship. They built them as tuning chambers. As instruments of alignment. Every stone placed with intention. Every chamber designed to echo a specific frequency. Every corridor an initiation. Because they knew what we are only beginning to remember, that space can hold memory. That architecture can heal. That form, when sacred, becomes function. And in that sacred function they encoded something timeless, the journey of the soul from chaos to order. From fragmentation to harmony. From silence to word. And Thoth was the witness of that journey. Not the judge. Not the savior. The witness. The scribe who writes not what should be, but what is. Because nothing real can be hidden. Nothing true can be denied. Everything vibrates. Everything reveals itself. Eventually. That's why the scrolls were sacred. Because they didn't invent knowledge. They recorded vibration. They captured the resonance of a moment and preserved it as teaching. And now you are the scroll. You are the page. You are the record being written right now by the quality of your presence. And here is the quiet instruction encoded in every true mystery school: if you want to change what's being written, change your vibration. Not through effort. Through alignment. Through choosing silence before reaction. Through speaking only what you are willing to live. Through walking as if your footsteps are prayers. Because they are. Every gesture. Every word. Every breath. All of it is inscription. And this is the power most have forgotten. The power of living as a sacred act. Not through perfection, but through intention. That's what it means to live initiated. Not to perform magic, but to become it. To realize that what you speak echoes. That what you believe shapes. That what you hold inside, even in silence, becomes the code your world responds to. Because the field does not lie. It simply responds. And now you begin to understand why the Book of Thoth was hidden. Not because it was dangerous, but because most were not ready to remember that they were the ones writing it. Page by page, thought by thought, action by action. You are not the reader of the sacred text. You are the ink, the movement, the message. And as this settles into your body, into your breath, you no longer need to ask what the next step is. You feel it. You don't chase it. You tune to it. Because the true path doesn't need to be forced. It reveals itself as your frequency shifts. That's the real magic. Not control, but coherence. Not domination, but devotion. And here, now, in this still point of remembering, one truth rings clearer than ever. You don't need to seek the voice of the divine. You are the voice. And your word, when spoken with presence, becomes not just sound, but structure. Not just expression, but genesis. And that changes everything. Because when your voice becomes a current of truth, it no longer echoes in vain. It resonates. It builds. It becomes architecture. And this is the secret Thoth inscribed not with ink, but with intention, that the word is not merely to speak, but to shape. And what it shapes is not just the world around you, but the one within. So now the question becomes not, what do I want, but what am I vibrating? Not, what do I need to say, but what needs to be said through me? That subtle shift is the threshold from wanting to weaving, from desire to design. Because the divine doesn't descend to fulfill your ego's agenda. It arises when your being becomes still enough to carry its tone. When you remember that what you call life is not something you are watching, it's something you are generating. And every time you forget that, Thoth does not punish. He simply records. Not out of judgment, but so the rhythm can be restored. That's why the heart was weighed against the feather. Not to measure morality, but to measure density. Heaviness. Entanglement. Resistance. The soul that cannot rise is not condemned. It is simply not coherent yet. It is still speaking two languages, the one of longing and the one of fear. It says, I want to be free while vibrating control. It says, I want love while vibrating abandonment. And the scale responds. Not to intention. To essence. Because manifestation is not born of desire. It is born of coherence. The harmony between thought, feeling, word, and deed. That is the real magic, the sacred symmetry that activates the creative field. And here's the part the ancient texts only whisper, you are the field. Your body is the temple. Your mind the altar. Your word the offering. So speak like you are shaping worlds, because you are. Speak not just to express, but to align. Speak like someone who knows the universe is listening. Because it is. And it's not listening to judge. It's listening to tune. To match your tone. To echo your frequency. To send back the song you are singing. Even if you don't know you're singing it. So pause. Feel your tone. What's playing underneath your thoughts? Is it harmony? Or is it noise? Because Thoth doesn't decode your sentences. He decodes your signal. And that signal, that invisible rhythm, is what opens or closes your path. It's what summons doors or shadows. It's what calls in remembrance or delay. Not because one is better, but because the field reflects what is ready. And the field is always honest. So if your life seems slow, stuck, uncertain, maybe the lesson isn't to push harder. Maybe it's to listen deeper. To notice the dissonance between your inner word and your outer walk. Because until you bring those into harmony, the true song of your life cannot begin. And when that harmony does come, even in small moments, the whole field responds. Synchronicity. Peace. Right place. Right time. Not magic. Just coherence. This is what it means to live the ancient path. Not in robes. Not in temples. But in rhythm. And that rhythm begins with silence. Then breath. Then word. Then world. In that order. Always. Because silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of space. The sacred void where vibration is born. And that's why every true initiate begins not by learning to speak, but by learning to be still. Because without stillness, there is no listening. And without listening, there is no precision. And without precision, the word loses its power. So if you truly want to speak with the voice of the divine, begin by tuning the temple. Your breath is the first chant. Your stillness the first sanctuary. Your body the first altar. Thoth understood this. He didn't teach language to fill time. He taught it to encode frequency. To inscribe the invisible on the visible. And that's why the ancients drew symbols. That's why they carved words into stone, not to be remembered, but to be reactivated. Because sacred language is not about history, it's about resonance. When your body hears it, something inside you stirs, not because it's new, but because it's known. It's a memory. A signal from before the forgetting. So if these words have reached you, don't rush past them. Let them linger. Let them resound inside your own temple. Because they are not here to inform you. They are here to remind you that you are the scribe now. You are the tablet. You are the one who chooses what is written next. And your ink is your vibration. And if you truly wish to live in power, then start with reverence. Not with fear, but with deep, clear respect. For your own voice. For your own field. For the living geometry of your being. Because if you don't speak from that place, you're not speaking, you're leaking. Your words scatter. Your tone fragments. And the universe hears static instead of signal. But when you speak with presence, with truth, with alignment, the field shifts. Not because you forced it, but because you matched it. This is the great reversal. You don't create by pushing. You create by tuning. The louder your effort, the less your alignment. The quieter your coherence, the stronger the echo. So ask yourself, before you speak today, what am I tuning to? What am I broadcasting? Not just with my words, but with my walk, my rhythm, my presence? Because Thoth is not a god outside you. He is the part of you that remembers how to speak from silence, that remembers how to live from center, that remembers that power is not volume, it is vibration. And maybe now you're ready to live that way. Maybe now you understand why some truths are whispered, not because they're weak, but because only the still can hear them. So now let's take it deeper. If vibration is the foundation, then mastery is the refinement of vibration. And that means your evolution is not about learning more. It's about vibrating clearer. More truth. Less noise. More essence. Less echo. This is where the ancient science of the word merges with the mystery of energy. The power of sacred speech was never just in what was said, it was in who was saying it. The quality of the vessel shapes the quality of the sound. That's why the initiate cleanses. Not just their habits, not just their diet, not just their thoughts, but their intention. Their inner posture. Their relationship to life itself. Because you can only create what you are ready to carry. And the universe does not respond to effort. It responds to integrity. You can whisper something from coherence and the cosmos rearranges. You can shout something from dissonance and the world stays still. That's not magic. That's law. So the real work isn't in crafting the perfect sentence. It's in tuning the field that speaks it. You could say all the right words. Repeat every sacred chant. Memorize every formula. But if you're saying it with an unanchored heart, a scattered mind, or a body filled with shame, nothing echoes. Because sound without soul is just noise. But sound with soul is creation. And this is the gift of sacred silence, not emptiness, but preparation. The womb of sound. The sacred pause before the pulse. That's why the word is only sacred when it emerges from stillness, when it's born from the depth of inner alignment. That's why Thoth didn't teach public speaking. He taught sacred presence. Because the tongue is only as powerful as the temple it belongs to. And your body is the temple now. So if you want your words to shape worlds, tend to your field. Care for your energy the way you would care for sacred ground. Speak less. Observe more. Let each word become a living offering. And when the time comes to speak, speak from the place inside you that has touched the silence. Not the silence of avoidance. The silence of awareness. The stillness that feels like a sacred hum. That's where Thoth lives. Not in old scrolls. Not in distant temples. But in the quiet center of the one who remembers. And maybe now you're beginning to feel it, not just understand, but feel that this isn't about worshiping a myth or decoding a symbol. It's about embodying the intelligence those symbols were meant to transmit. You see, ancient knowledge was never about memorizing names or dates. It was about transmission through presence. And Thoth, in his essence, is not an external deity. He is a frequency, a precise harmonic alignment that arises within when the inner and outer worlds begin to mirror each other. That's why he was called the measurer. Because he didn't invent reality. He measured the resonance between you and it. Between your thoughts and your words. Between your intentions and your results. And if they were in dissonance, he didn't punish, he simply revealed the gap. That's the true meaning of the scale. It's not moral judgment. It's energetic geometry. So let's make this practical. If your thoughts say abundance, but your speech echoes lack, Thoth measures the gap. If your words declare love, but your actions radiate fear, Thoth writes it down. Not to condemn, but to reflect. Because once you see the gap, you can bridge it. This is the true art of manifestation, not desire, but alignment. Not pressure, but precision. And the greatest tool for this precision is the word. But now that you know the word shapes your field, what shapes the word? The ancients knew it's not just what you say, but the vibration you hold when you say it. The geometry behind the sound. The rhythm behind the sentence. The frequency inside the breath. This is why in ancient temples, before initiates spoke a single word of power, they fasted. They purified. They aligned. Because only a clean channel can transmit divine codes without distortion. You are that channel now. So here's a shift. Stop trying to say the right thing. Start being the right field. And then let speech arise from there. Because when you speak from coherence, the universe doesn't just hear you, it sings with you. Now, maybe you're wondering, how does this apply to the everyday? How does this sacred principle help with things like money, health, purpose, relationships? The answer is in the fractal nature of law. The same codes that shape galaxies also shape your conversations. The same intelligence that spins planets also responds to your intention. So when you say, I never have enough, you're not just venting. You're coding. When you say, nobody understands me, you're not just expressing. You're projecting. And the field around you listens. It calibrates. It adjusts. Not based on your wishes, but on your consistency. The universe doesn't judge. It reflects. And that's why the path of the initiate is not about perfection. It's about self-awareness. Every word becomes an instrument. Every thought becomes a prayer. Every action becomes a spell. And this is where the deeper meaning of magic reemerges, not as illusion but as intention made visible. This is why Thoth wasn't just a scribe. He was a technician of consciousness, a spiritual architect, a designer of frequency. And his presence was a reminder nothing is random. Every outcome is architecture. And you are the architect now. So how do you build? Not through control, through clarity, not through force, through coherence. And this brings us to something even more essential. When the ancients spoke of magic, they didn't mean bending reality to your will. They meant becoming so aligned with the structure of the cosmos that reality bends with you, not in rebellion but in resonance. And that begins with a single shift from unconscious speech to sacred utterance. So try it now. Before the day ends, speak something true, not to impress, not to perform, but to align. Say something your soul has been waiting to hear from your mouth. Say it with presence, with silence behind it. Say it like Thoth is listening. Because he is. Not as a god in the sky, but as the part of you that remembers how powerful you are when you're fully aligned. When you're not speaking out of fear or repeating out of habit. But when you're breathing, feeling, creating. And from that place, letting the word emerge. And now the question deepens. If every word is a seed and every thought is a vibration, what kind of garden have you been growing? What lives in the soil of your subconscious, quietly feeding the roots of your everyday life? The initiate learns not only to observe this garden, but to replant it, word by word, breath by breath. And here's the next initiation, one that Thoth never taught with noise, but always through silence, the sacred architecture of timing. Not just what is spoken, but when. Because truth spoken too early is still a kind of distortion. Wisdom shared out of alignment is still noise. Even healing, when forced into someone not ready to receive it, becomes disruption, not medicine. That's why Thoth was not only the god of writing, of speech, of magic, but of time. Not mechanical time, not the ticking of hours, but kairos, sacred time. The moment when the soul is ripened and the seed, long buried, begins to break open not because it is forced, but because it is ready. This is what you're stepping into now. The readiness. You are not here because you forced the gates open. You are here because the frequency of your field began to echo back to the source. And the source, hearing your vibration, responded not with thunder, but with silence that whispers, now. Now the real journey begins. And here is where Thoth's scales reappear not as judgment, but as balance. Because from this moment, your words carry more weight. Not because someone is watching you from above, but because your soul has started remembering that it was never ordinary to begin with. You were born encoded. Every letter in your name is a vibration. Every story you've lived is a syllable in a forgotten language that is just now beginning to reassemble itself. And this is where something else becomes clear. You are not just learning these principles. You are remembering them. Because they are not external to you. They live in your breath. They hum in your bones. They whisper in your dreams. That's why certain words stir something so deep it feels ancient. Because it is. It's not nostalgia. It's resonance. The feeling that what you're hearing was always inside you, waiting to be reactivated. That's what initiation really is, the reanimation of what was never dead, only dormant. So let's return now to the symbol of Thoth, but let's take him off the pedestal. Let's take him out of the temple. Let's place him where he has always truly been, inside you. He is not a statue. He is a state of inner precision, a state where thought, word, and presence align. When you enter that state, even for a breath, you become what he always symbolized, the bridge between invisible and visible. And that bridge is not an idea. It's a frequency. You felt it before, those moments when you spoke something and it manifested almost instantly. A name appears in your mind and then calls you. A desire whispered at night, answered in the morning. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. And coherence is the sacred heartbeat of manifestation. So the task now is not to try harder. It's to tune deeper. To speak less, but with more presence. To act less, but with more awareness. To ask less, but from the fullness of a field that already holds the answer. And here's what happens when you do. Synchronicity increases. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped distorting it. You're no longer sending out scattered signals, fragmented prayers, or unconscious commands. You are becoming a conductor. Like a musician who no longer fumbles with keys, but feels the music in the fingertips. This is the difference between magic as concept and magic as frequency. And now you understand, the true book of Thoth was never buried in sand. It was waiting in silence. In your silence. Because only when the mind goes quiet, the vibration stabilizes, the breath slows, only then can the sacred script be read. And it is not made of words. It is made of awareness. So before we close this chapter, let me offer you this practice. Not as an exercise, but as a portal. When you wake up tomorrow, don't rush into the noise. Don't check your phone. Don't reach for distraction. Sit up. Place your feet on the floor. Take 3 breaths. And say one sentence out loud with presence. Let it be true. Let it be whole. Let it be aligned. Maybe it's I speak from my source. Or my word is a bridge. Or what I declare, I prepare. Then say nothing more. Let the silence after the word do the rest. That's where Thoth lives now, not in ancient temples, but in the space between your sentence and your silence. And maybe, just maybe, that's all he ever was. A mirror of what awakens when you remember that every sound is sacred. Every word is a world. And you are the speaker of creation. And here, right in the hush between thought and form, we arrive at the mystery most overlooked, not the silence before a word, but the silence after it. That soft stillness where reality listens. Where vibration is absorbed. Where the universe rearranges itself in response. Few notice it. Even fewer live there. But those who do, they don't need many words. They don't manifest with force. They tune. They align. And the world, like an instrument finely strung, plays their presence back to them. This is where the practice becomes life. Where your day is no longer divided between the sacred and the mundane, because every gesture, every phrase, every interaction becomes a note in your sacred song. A message scribed not on paper, but on the fabric of the real. And here we return to that ancient formula. That word so misunderstood, so trivialized, so misused. Abracadabra. I create as I speak. Say it now slowly. But say it with the awareness that your voice is not just sound. It is a wave. And that wave carries structure. Not just into the air, but into the field. Into the space that holds all form. Into the very mind of the all. You are not requesting. You are declaring. You are not begging. You are composing. And what you compose will eventually become experience. This is the part that turns soft belief into solid embodiment. It's also where many stop. Because here, you no longer get to pretend that your thoughts don't matter. Here, you can't say you want peace and gossip in secret. You can't pray for love and vibrate with fear. You can't repeat affirmations and abandon presence. Here, the law begins to respond in real time. Here, what you emit returns not months later, but now. Not in random symbols, but in clear mirrors. And that's the turning point. Where magic ceases to be a concept and becomes accountability. And that's where many turn back. Not because they don't believe, but because they're not yet willing to be that honest. But you've stayed. So now let me ask you. Can you carry your word like a flame? Can you speak knowing that your breath holds blueprint? Can you remain silent when silence is the more powerful spell? Because the initiate who lives from this place doesn't rush to speak. They wait for alignment. They wait for the moment when the field softens. When the heart steadies, when the thought clarifies, and then, only then, they speak. And the world listens. Because that vibration is no longer personal. It is universal. It echoes the order Thoth always served. So let's go deeper into what that order really is. The Egyptians called it Ma'at. Not just truth, not just balance, but the living principle of alignment. A field of integrity that exists beyond morality. Ma'at is not right versus wrong. It is coherence. Harmony. Sacred resonance. And when you speak from Ma'at, your word cuts through illusions like a beam through shadow. Not because it's louder. Because it's clear. Because it doesn't come from ego, or fear, or performance. It comes from the center. And in that center, creation always begins. That's why the Book of Thoth was never a manual of spells. It was a record of inner states. A log of alignment. A memory bank of frequencies and the forms they shaped. So now the question is, what are you shaping? Not in intention, not in wish, but in vibration. Because the word you speak is not limited to your mouth. You speak through presence, through action, through the gaze you carry into every room, through the decisions you make when no one is watching, and the field listens to all of it. That's what makes this path different. This is not manifestation as demand. This is manifestation as dance. And the more in rhythm you are, the more fluidly the dance unfolds. So let me offer you a final key. A shift that changes everything. Don't just speak to describe. Speak to direct. Don't just narrate what is. Declare what is becoming. Don't say, I'm tired. Say, I'm preparing for new strength. Don't say nothing works out. Say clarity is forming in unseen ways. Because every sentence you speak is either coding your next step or repeating your last one. So ask yourself now. Are your words building your temple or reinforcing your prison? Only you can know. But the moment you choose to make every word sacred, you won't just change your language. You'll change your life. Because the code isn't locked. The book isn't hidden. Thoth never left. He lives in the choice you make with your next breath. Speak from the soul. Pause in the silence. And the universe will respond not with noise, but with precision. Because now it recognizes you. You've tuned. You've aligned. You've remembered. And what is remembered cannot be forgotten again. And now, as the veil thins, we turn to the archetype of Thoth in the modern world. No longer confined to ancient temples or hieroglyphs, his essence permeates our daily lives. In the digital age, where information flows ceaselessly, Thoth's spirit manifests in our pursuit of knowledge, our communication, and our quest for understanding. He is present in the algorithms that process language, in the symbols we use to convey meaning, and in the very structure of our thoughts. Psycholinguistics, the study of how language is processed in the mind, reveals that words are not mere labels but are deeply intertwined with our cognitive functions. Each word we use activates neural pathways, shaping our perception and influencing our reality. This aligns with the ancient understanding that words hold power, that they can create or destroy, heal or harm. In this light, the modern scribe is not one who writes on papyrus but one who crafts messages in code, who navigates the complexities of human-computer interaction, and who understands the profound impact of language on the human psyche. Thoth's legacy lives on in every programmer, linguist, and communicator who seeks to bridge gaps and foster understanding. Moreover, the principles of Ma'at, truth, balance, order, are more relevant than ever. In a world inundated with misinformation and chaos, the pursuit of Ma'at becomes a guiding light. It calls upon us to discern truth from falsehood, to seek harmony amidst discord, and to uphold justice in our actions. This discernment is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a spiritual practice. It requires us to attune ourselves to the subtle frequencies of truth, to listen deeply, and to act with integrity. It is a call to embody the principles we espouse, to live in alignment with our highest values. In our daily lives, we can honor Thoth and Ma'at by cultivating mindfulness in our speech, by seeking knowledge with humility, and by striving for balance in our interactions. Through these practices, we become modern initiates, walking the path of wisdom and contributing to the restoration of harmony in the world. And what if every choice you make today is not just shaping your future but echoing through unseen layers of time and consciousness? What if your words, your thoughts, your smallest intentions are ripples moving not only forward but inward into the architecture of the soul? This is not philosophy, it's resonance. The ancient seers knew this. That's why nothing in their rituals was arbitrary. Each gesture mirrored a cosmic principle. Each chant, each glyph, each silence reflected an invisible order. To live under the gaze of Thoth was not to fear judgment, it was to walk in conscious alignment. He is not a punisher, but a measure. He doesn't sentence, he reflects. And in that reflection, your life reveals itself. That's why the Hall of Ma'at, with its scale and feather, is not a place you visit after death. It's a place you revisit each time your heart trembles before truth, each time you choose between reaction and presence, fear and love, noise and clarity. The feather is not somewhere else. It's here in the center of your chest. Your heart is already being weighed. Not by an external force, but by the reality you manifest. The weight is your dissonance. The lightness, your coherence. And if you truly understand this, then the ritual of living becomes sacred. You stop looking for signs and begin living as one. You stop echoing pain and begin emitting peace. This is the forgotten power of language. Not the language of grammar and rules, but the primordial tongue, the frequency that preceded form. The same frequency encoded in the names of the gods, in the sounds of sacred chants, in the spaces between syllables. Every tradition had a way to express this. In Egypt, it was Heka, the magical use of words. In India, mantra. In Kabbalah, the divine name vibrating through creation. And you are the only instrument that can tune this resonance within. Your throat, your breath, your intent, all of it is the wand. But only when guided by silence, grounded in integrity, bathed in presence. Otherwise, your words are just air. Empty sound. Noise in the temple. So the question is not, what do you want to say? But what are you ready to make sacred? Because each day offers you the same altar. Each moment is a ritual. The way you wake, the way you listen, the way you name your own life, it all speaks the language of Thoth. You don't need to seek permission. Only alignment. To align with Thoth is not to become perfect, it is to become present. Deeply, unapologetically present. Present enough to hear the quiet distortion in your own words. Present enough to feel the moment your thoughts drift into fear, the moment your voice speaks from defense instead of depth. Because each of those moments holds a choice, to repeat what was or to rewrite what can be. This rewriting isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or miracles. It begins subtly. In how you speak to your body. In how you name your emotions. In the tone you use when you speak about the future. That's where the reprogramming starts, not with spells, but with sincerity. The ancient priests didn't chant to impress the gods. They chanted to attune. Every sound was a tuning fork. Every ritual a way to restore vibration. And this is your true magic. Not in controlling the world around you, but in controlling the frequency within. What you call reality bends to coherence, not control. So what if you became a ritual? What if the way you moved through the day was no longer random but rhythmic? What if your speech became a temple, your thoughts an invocation, your silence a sanctuary? Then every step becomes sacred. Not because the world changed, but because your perception did. And the world will follow. Because vibration is not local. It spreads. It informs. When your field becomes clear, others feel it. They may not know why, but they pause. They soften. They trust. That is the power of coherence. It invites everything around you to rise. This is the mystery behind every true initiate. They don't walk with noise. They walk with frequency. Their power is not in what they say, but in the silence that shapes their words. They are not trying to convince. They are becoming a vibration that no longer needs explanation. You are not separate from that lineage. If this message lives in you, it's because the thread is still alive. Woven through centuries, buried in symbols, waiting for someone like you to remember. Not to study it, but to live it. To speak from it. To walk as it. The ones who came before didn't leave instructions. They left impressions, sacred echoes carved into memory, waiting for your inner senses to awaken. They trusted that when the time came, the right soul would feel the pulse beneath the silence and begin to move with it. You're not asked to memorize. You're asked to embody. The teachings were never about concepts. They were about coherence. The moment your inner world begins to match the divine rhythm, thought, word, breath, silence, the architecture of your life begins to reconfigure. Not because of wishful thinking, but because you've aligned with law. That's the hidden meaning of magic. Not the manipulation of matter, but the mastery of mind. A mind purified not by force, but by clarity. A mind that no longer reacts, but reflects. That no longer speaks from compulsion, but from command. The true magician does not impose, they resonate. And what you resonate, you call forth. Not instantly, not always dramatically, but inevitably. Because reality responds to what's stable. And stability doesn't mean you never wobble. It means you return again and again to the center. To the breath. To the word behind all words. This is the return to the temple. Not a building, not a tradition, but an inner state where everything becomes sacred again. Where the body is not an accident, but an instrument. Where the voice is not for noise, but for encoding. Where your life becomes the altar and your presence the offering. So speak slowly. Walk wisely. Rest when called. Move when stirred. And above all, remember, nothing you do in presence is ever lost. Every aligned action, every sincere word, every moment of stillness sends out a pattern. And somewhere, in a life, in a soul, in a silence, that pattern finds its echo. That is the work. Quiet. Daily. Invisible. But eternal. There is no final initiation. Only deeper recognition. What you once called the end of the path is just the edge of another map, one that was folded inside your silence all along. And now, as you stand in this widening space, something becomes unmistakably clear. You were never being tested. You were being tuned. Tuned to feel the pulse beneath the noise. To hear the difference between truth and repetition. Between inherited fear and ancestral wisdom. Between the voice that echoes your wound and the one that carries your code. The tuning hurts, yes. But it reveals. And what it reveals, you can no longer forget. That's why the ancient ones never rushed the seeker. They knew that speed was the enemy of depth. They watched how you listened, not what you memorized. They waited for your vibration to match the vibration of what you sought. And when it did, they didn't explain. They opened. That's how knowledge moves. Not in bullet points. In thresholds. And you've crossed one now. You've begun to sense the blueprint within chaos, to feel how your resistance feeds the very forces you want to dissolve, to witness how every unspoken truth becomes a block and every unconscious word becomes a weight, but also to taste the lightness that arrives when you choose alignment over noise. And maybe now you're starting to see that you don't need a new life. You need a new relationship to the life you already have. A different posture, a clearer tone, a deeper listening. That's the gateway. That's where transformation stops being an idea and becomes an atmosphere. A way of walking, breathing, responding. So don't worry if you don't feel powerful yet. Don't chase some mythical mastery. Just keep tuning. Keep breathing. Keep choosing silence when your ego wants to shout. Keep pausing before the old phrase escapes your lips. Keep treating your presence as the spell. That's what makes the gods whisper back. Because Thoth is not in the sky. He's in the space between your thoughts. He's the moment you almost spoke from habit and chose awareness instead. He's not waiting for ritual. He's listening for resonance. And when he hears it, the next door opens. What opens now is not another layer of knowledge. It's a deeper intimacy with the source. A return to the place where the word is not yet spoken but already vibrating, the pre-language space where reality still listens, still waits. This is where Thoth truly lives. Not in the hieroglyph, not in the scroll, but in that subtle moment when your intention aligns with the breath that carries it. Here, you start to realize the silence before you speak is more powerful than the sentence itself. The energy that precedes action is the one that shapes it. And every time you enter that pause with awareness, the future begins to reorganize. Not because you're forcing change, but because you're now participating in its origin. The ancients called it sacred timing. The moment when the inner clock strikes something wordless and you simply know, now. Not a second before. Not a thought too soon. This is the time. The time to say, to write, to choose, to become. You felt it before, in the stillness before saying yes. In the breath you took before leaving. In the quiet certainty that came before you turned toward your own becoming. And that's why this path isn't linear. Because the soul doesn't walk in straight lines. It spirals. It revisits. It returns, but never the same. And each time you circle back, you're bringing more light, more clarity, more depth. You're not repeating. You're refining. That's also why truth can't be mass-produced. It must be re-embodied, re-experienced. Each day, in each choice. The word that had power yesterday may not carry the same frequency today. And the silence that seemed unbearable before may now feel like home. You start to see your spiritual maturity isn't measured by how much you know, but by how much you feel before you act. How many times you choose presence over performance, integrity over immediacy, frequency over form. And from this space, this tuning, something exquisite begins to emerge. A kind of speech that doesn't rush to convince. A kind of listening that heals without trying. A kind of presence that shifts the room without a word. This is the beginning of real magic. And now, as the journey reaches its culmination, you find yourself not at an end, but at a beginning, a return to the self, to the inner temple where silence speaks louder than words. Here, in this sacred space, you realize that the true magic was never in the rituals or the symbols, but in the presence you bring to each moment. The weight of your words, the intent behind your actions, the stillness between your thoughts, all converge to form the essence of your being. You are the scribe and the script, the question and the answer, the seeker and the found. In this realization, there is no need for grand declarations or elaborate ceremonies. Your life, lived with awareness and authenticity, becomes the ultimate right. Each breath a prayer, each step a pilgrimage, each interaction a testament to the sacredness of existence. As you move forward, carry this truth gently. Let it infuse your daily routines, your conversations, your choices. Let it guide you not with rigidity, but with grace. For the path of the initiate is not one of perfection, but of continual presence. And so, the journey continues, not as a quest for something beyond, but as a deepening into what is. With each moment embraced fully, you embody the wisdom of the ages, the teachings of Thoth, the balance of Ma'at. In this space, there is nothing more to seek, nothing more to attain. There is only the living of the truth you have discovered, the being of the light you have uncovered. And in that you are complete. And in that you are complete. Not because there's nothing left to explore, but because you now know the path was always within. The rituals, the symbols, the ancient codes, all of it was a mirror. A whisper. A way to bring you back here, to this moment. To yourself. If this journey stirred something in you, if it echoed what you've long carried in silence, then speak. Not for the world, but for yourself. Leave a comment below. Let it be a small act of anchoring this truth in reality. Let it be a ripple in this field of remembrance. And if you wish to keep walking these deeper paths, if you feel the pull of more sacred maps, more inner codes, then subscribe. Not to follow, but to continue unfolding together. Because this isn't just a video. It's a doorway. And there are more to come. You're not alone in this remembering. And this is only the beginning.